Assalamu alaikum. I am Gayoor Ahmad, and this is a lesson for 10th class, subject English, topic punctuation, continued. Dear friends, we are discussing the use of comma. Point number 8, use of comma with parenthesis. Dear friends, parenthesis is a clause, phrase or word which is inserted, usually for explanation or amplification, into a sentence which is already grammatically complete, and usually marked off with brackets, commas, or dashes. Parentheses are used to give additional information to the reader, information that would disrupt the flow of the sentence if written as a non-restrictive clause. Commas may be placed after the closing parenthesis, but not before either the opening or the closing parenthesis. It is also not placed after the opening parenthesis. For example, consider this sentence. After opening the peach box and eating several peaches, Aslam had a hard time replacing the lid. Friends, we need a comma in the sentence, but this comma can neither be used before the opening parenthesis as in example number 1, nor after it as in example number 2. It can also not be used before the closing parenthesis as in example number 3. The correct place to use the comma is after the closing parenthesis as in example number 4. Also, note that the comma would be necessary if the parentheses were removed, because it joins a dependent and independent clause. And the sentence without the parentheses would be, after opening the peach box, Aslam had a hard time replacing the lid, and a comma is needed to join the two clauses. Example number 2. Arshid cleaned his room, grumbling all the while before going out to play cricket. Here we don't need a comma, so it can neither be used before the opening parenthesis nor after the closing parenthesis. In fact, it is not used at all. Note that since the man sentence without the parenthesis does not require a comma, it is not necessary to add a comma when inserting the parentheses. And the sentence without parentheses would be, Arshid cleaned his room before going out to play cricket. Comma is not needed here and would not be needed if we insert the parentheses. Example number 3. The captain chose 3 players, Zahid, Rashid and Basit, to bat in the super over. In this sentence, the commas within the parentheses are necessary because they separate items in a series, and this series makes up the information within the parentheses. The comma before end is optional. Example number 4. When they arrived, finally, the guests were promptly shown to their rooms. Here we need a comma after the closing parenthesis, but the comma cannot be used after the opening parenthesis or before the closing one. As in this example, the comma is used to punctuate the man sentence, specifically to separate the dependent and independent clauses. Therefore, the comma belongs in the man sentence, not within the parentheses. Number 9. Use of comma with interrupters or parenthetical elements. Dear friends, interrupters are little thoughts that pop up in the middle of a sentence to show emotion, tone or emphasis. And a parenthetical element is a phrase that adds extra information to the sentence but could be removed without changing the meaning of the sentence. Both the interrupters and the parenthetical elements should be set off with commas. For example, number 1. The weather, I was happy to see, was beginning to clear. In this sentence, we have a parenthetical clause, I was happy to see, and this should be separated by a comma, one before it and one after it. Number 2, her cooking skills, if you can call them skills, left something to be desired. And number 3, it was, sadly, the last day of the camp. In these sentences, we have, if you can call them skills, and sadly, as parenthetical elements or interrupter, and so should be separated by commas. Number 10, comma between coordinate adjectives. My dear friends, coordinate adjectives are a series of adjectives which qualify a noun in equal degrees. Such adjectives should be separated by a comma. For example, number 1, that man is a pompous, self-righteous, annoying idiot. In this sentence, we have 3 adjectives: pompous, self-righteous, and annoying. And these are coordinate adjectives as they qualify the noun in equal degrees and should be separated by a comma. Similarly, the sweet, scintillating aroma of cinnamon buns filled the kitchen. Here we have 2 adjectives, scintillating and sweet. These are again coordinate adjectives and should be separated by a comma. But, dear friends, if the adjectives are not coordinate, that is, if they don't qualify the noun in equal degrees, we don't separate them with a comma. For example, the adorable little boy was eating ice cream. Here the 2 adjectives, adorable and little, are not coordinate and comma is not used to separate them. Number 11, use of comma with subjects and verbs. Dear friends, a subject is never separated from its verb by a comma. For example, my friend is a wonderful cricketer. Rashid is reading the Arabian Nights. In these sentences, my friend and Rashid are subjects of the sentences and cannot be separated from the predicate by commas. Friends, be especially careful with long or complex subjects. For example, in the sentence, the things that cause me joy may also cause me pain. The subject is the things that cause me joy. It is a long subject, but it cannot be separated from the rest of the sentence, that is a predicate, by a comma. Similarly, in the sentence, navigating through snow, sleet, wind, and darkness is a miserable way to travel. We have a long and complex subject, which is navigating through snow, sleet, wind, and darkness. And this cannot be separated from the rest of the sentence by a comma. However, comma is used to separate the items in the series, the nouns in the subject, that is snow, sleet, wind, and darkness. Once again, the comma before and is optional. But the comma after the last noun, darkness in this example, will be incorrect as it will separate the subject from its predicate. Number 12. Use of comma between 2 nouns in a compound subject or object. Dear friends, we don't separate 2 nouns that appear together as a compound subject or compound object. For example, Altaf and his team will be playing a T20 match this evening. In the sentence, we have a compound subject made up of 2 nouns or noun phrases. Here, Altaf and his team, and the 2 cannot be separated by a comma. Similarly, Altaf will wear a green t-shirt and white trousers. In the sentence, we have a compound object made up of 2 noun phrases, a green t-shirt and white trousers, which cannot be separated by a comma. When a subject or object is made up of 2 items and the second item is parenthetical, we can set off the second item with commas, one before it and one after it. For example, Altaf, the captain, will open the innings. Here the noun phrase, the captain, explains or describes the first noun, that is Altaf, and so should be set off with commas. But we do not need a comma when we are simply listing 2 items, as in examples 1 and 2 here. Number 13. Use of comma between 2 verbs in a compound predicate. My dear friends, when the subject of a sentence is doing more than one thing, we get a compound predicate. In a compound predicate that contains two verbs, we don't separate them with a comma. For example, Javed will sing and play the centaur. Here the two verbs are will sing and play. These are not separated by a comma. Friends, this mistake is most common when the predicate is made up of long verb phrases. For example, I meant to buy tickets for Team Altaf's T20 match, but ran out of time. Here we have long predicates, meant to buy tickets for Team Altaf's T20 match and ran out of time. But these cannot be separated by a comma. But dear friends, if there is a chance of misreading, then the compound predicate should be separated by a comma. For example, Altaf spotted the man who entered the playground and waved. This sentence, although not incorrect, is ambiguous. It is not clear who waved, Altaf or the man. Most probably, it is the man who waved. So, we should write the sentence with a comma as Altaf spotted the man who entered the playground and waved. The comma is used before and. And in this sentence, comma is used to make clear that it was Altaf who waved and not the man. And also, if the subject of the sentence is doing more than two things, then commas are used to separate them. For example, the girls will sing, dance and play some musical instruments. Comma can be used before the and, before the last item, but it is optional. My dear friends, that is all for today, but we will continue with the use of comma in our next lesson. Till then, it is goodbye and Khuda Hafiz.